Palantir, too expensive right now?
Ooh, depends on
It's
your
okay.
time.
It's not going to listen to this. Don't worry.
Yeah, it depends upon your time frame. To be honest, I mean, if you're just judging off short term, sure, it looks expensive. If you're judging off of a longer term, kind of thought process, I don't think so. I mean, I think their growth rates are probably the smallest right now that we'll see for the next several years. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think it's a stretch to imagine this company gets back to 18%, 20%, or 25% plus growth rates as far as top line. Bottom line should expand faster. I don't think the stock's super expensive. Obviously, it's not as cheap as it was, at the beginning of the year. But yeah, and I have different cases around Palantir as well in terms of my bearish case, bullish case. I think the company's going to be a money printer. I really do. I think we're at infant stage of profitability. We're at inning one right now. You're going to look at this company 3 years out, 5 years out, and just laugh at how not profitable the company really is nowadays, and compared to what the company will be in many years. So, but in terms of me, it's certainly one of those stocks I watch my risk levels. I have less than $100,000 in that stock. I have maybe 80K or so, or 90K. So it's one of those that I don't want to risk the farm on Palantir, but I do want that upside potential. So that's kind of where I'm at with Palantir. But I'd love to hear your perspective and opinion too.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a multiple that has been added on just from the AI boom, which is sort of this macro term du jour. I think 2021 was all about metaverse and 2023 is all about AI. One of the things that I've been thinking about quite a bit actually is whether I want to pivot out of Palantir and just allocate more into SoFi or more into PayPal, just because I doubled my Palantir position the day they announced AIP, which was $7.50 or $8 a share. I bought initially at like $18, something like that, or $17 on the way down. I doubled my position at like 7, 8. And so I could roll out of Palantir right now. And I probably should, just to simplify my portfolio just in general. The reason I haven't so far is the long-term bull case, like you highlighted. I also think that in Q3, the S&P 500 inclusion, which is basically why they also got that buyback allocation, just so that they can ensure their EPS profitable. I think that's going to help them a lot. It's going to allow a lot of funds to funnel cash and then basically boost up the stock. But at the same time, man, I think that if Nvidia shows one sign of weakness, all of these AI stocks are going to get hit pretty hard. And right now it's sunshine and rainbows. It's that honeymoon period. But I've just been burned on these other cycles. You had NFTs, you had the metaverse, and now it's like AI. And I don't know if this is something that we are stealing forward profits from future years because there's still maybe a period of time that's execution risk based until we actually see the thing that we're being promised today, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have tried to kind of put it into that category of comparing it to the metaverse or NFTs and these sorts of things. And I don't know. I just don't think that's the best comp just because, I mean, how many people were actually using NFTs or even cared about that, to be honest? Unless you were super in that niche group of folks that cared about that. I don't think Jensen was talking about that. Snowflake CEO wasn't really talking about that. Palantir, every company in the world is thinking AI. Every company in the world, top level executives from Apple to Meta to every company is really thinking about AI approaches. I just read something, I think the other day, Apple's spending millions of dollars a day on AI, right? And it's something interesting happened on the Snowflake conference call where they asked Frank Slootman and the other executive there, when's it going to hit on the software side? And they basically said 2024. I think everybody got too excited thinking, oh, the software side is going to start hitting in 23. And it's just not realistic. I mean, this is really like hardware build out year.
Right.
And then we should start to see some revenue start to, funnel in 24 for these companies, whether it be Palantir or anybody else out there. I think everybody just got too excited too fast. It seems like a space that's not going anywhere. It's because at the end of the day, if if Palantir can save a company $50 million a year and the company has to spend $20 million a year on the product, it's going to be a no-brainer, right? So we'll see how it shakes out. I think there's something real long-term there. I'll put it like that.
Don't get me wrong. I absolutely agree with that. I don't think AI is a dud. I just think that right now it's sort of an unmolded slab of clay to the layman. I work in the tech sector. I understand the productivity benefits that I use GPT every day for my own daily tasks, and I look like a machine to my colleagues because I can get stuff done in a fraction of the time. But at the same time, I'm on client and customer calls every single day where I'm trying to sell our own AI features from our software perspective. And it's not really AI. It's just like an if this, then that model or some type of machine learning model. And they just don't understand how to apply it into their regular life. It's just like, oh, I heard this thing makes it easier for me. I just don't know exactly how it does that. And so I think that there's going to be a natural gap between what these companies are talking about today and when the actual productivity gains are going to be seen from the average office worker in 12 months.
Yeah. Okay, so what I think the best comp is personally is I remember I got in the market 08, 09. That was kind of like my infant stage of like trying to figure this stuff out. And then I really started getting involved in 2010, 2011. And I remember back in 2010 and 2011, even in 2012, everybody was starting to talk about the cloud.
Right.
And everybody on CNBC was talking about the cloud and who's going to be the big cloud players. And a lot of people didn't even know, like, what is the cloud? Like, what is this cloud thing everybody's talking about?
Right.
But you heard a lot of executives speaking about cloud, very similar to how everybody's kind of using AI as a buzzword. Everybody at that time was using cloud as a buzzword. And it wasn't really clear who was going to be for sure the biggest winners in that space. Obviously, nowadays, it's very clear who was the winners and not winners, right? But the cloud ended up becoming a key component of every single company in the world. Like, I don't think anybody exists without cloud. Even if you have a small business, you're likely on the cloud in some form, right? Either through Dropbox or AWS or somebody. I think that's where we're going with AI, where it's going to be incorporated into every single business in the world over the next 10 years, though. It's not going to be like an overnight thing. It's going to be more companies adapt, more companies. The spend will go up immensely as years kind of tick on. No different than the cloud. In the early days, companies would spend very small amounts of money on the cloud. And then as they grew bigger and their cloud demands grew bigger, obviously, the beneficiaries like AWS, Google Cloud, and others, benefited huge. And so that's what I think is going to play out here. It's going to be a big 10, 20-year cycle. And it's just going to be growth. The growth rates are going to seem insane at first, but then over time, it will be something that the numbers just start to become really big and the growth rate slow.
Honestly, I think that's a really good comparable. And I don't even think it's going to take 10 to 20 years. Like, it's going to be way less. Like, you see these exponential growth curves in terms of adoption rates of new technologies. I don't know if you've ever seen this chart, but it's basically this chart where it shows like the time to adopt in the average household. And it goes like the refrigerator, the radio, color TV, or whatever. And it just gets incrementally faster and faster because they're all derivatives on each other, right? And from a technology stack perspective, AI is just going to be way faster than that because like I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone, let alone a smartphone. Like I didn't have a cell phone until late. We grew up in a generation where the internet, when we were kids, it wasn't a thing, or it was just starting out. And now we're at a place where we're introducing AI. We are much more willing to adopt new technologies just because we've had to adopt so many in the past.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no disagreements when it comes to that. 100%.
Let's pivot. I want to touch on all of the stocks that we share. Revolve was my third biggest position at some point. I sold out of half of my position back in February at I think $26 or $27. And thankfully I did because it just hit 52-week lows last week. I think it hit like $13. Company is still executing. What's your thoughts there, just on a high level?
Yeah, I like the company long term. I think they've been in a little bit of a tough place short term, not executing certainly as well as they have in the past. Balance sheet's in a great place. Management team, the two gentlemen that lead the company have done a really good job. Yeah, those gentlemen have done a great job, building this company from literally nothing into, a big player in the market. So I think they'll be fine long term. I think they're just in a bad spot short term. That's kind of my views. My views are 2024, we start to see the business increase again. If the business doesn't get in a better place in 24, I'll be much more concerned. But for right now, it's certainly not a panic situation for me in regards to Revolve.
Well, you were buying actually back in 2020 when everything was shut down, and this Revolve I think hit like $7 or something like that. I think my average right now is like 14, 15. I think I just slightly hit red. I remember when this thing hit 80 and I am still slapping myself for not selling out a portion at that time. But that's time in the market, right? I can't, like, how am I going to know that?